From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here on a Monday, live and direct to you from our Plus studios here, and I am glad you are joining us. We've got a good show on tap. Hope you had a good weekend, and we're going to kick things off this morning. Get the phone number up there, and you're invited to join in the conversation. Lots of things to talk about with the subject at hand, and talking about incarcerations, prisons, jails, what's happening here in the state. And someone who I think, lives it every day is with us. Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall is with us. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning,
it's nice
Nick.
of you to join us on this Monday. I know that you are a bigwig, and you can probably say, Nick, I don't want to come on Mondays. I want to come in on Wednesdays. But I have been told that when you do come on and you're a regular guest, you want to come on Mondays because starting your week on Morning Line is starting your week off right. Boom, right off the bat, you've got a great time. The rest of the week, really, it's downhill from here for you. But you want to come on Mondays because it gets your week off on the right foot. Man, not so much because of the show, but because you get to hang with me, and I'm flattered. Thank you. By the way, his staff is here, and they're the ones who have shared that. I'm flattered. I know you don't want it because you think my head's big anyway. But thank you for coming on.
Is this April Fool's? What are you doing?
No. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. All things considered, not a whole lot to do. That's a good weekend sometimes. So
kind of laid back, take it easy, watch the Titans lose.
Oh my gosh.
Let's just not go there. This is not a sports show this morning. You know what else is interesting now? Of course, you basically supervise a small city with our Davidson County Jail. And I was going to kind of ask you, this weekend there was an editorial saying that the commissioner of the Department of Corrections, which is different, that's our prisons, resign. And certainly you're aware of some of the issues that have come up over the last several months with regard to, safety of the guards, to some of the abuses of inmates, to our questions about Tricor and the contracts. I'm just wondering, I know that running a jail or prison is a very, very difficult job. And I'm not asking you to say whether or not you think he should resign or not. But when you see the problems they're having at the state level, what's your reaction?
I have mixed emotions, really.
Okay.
Part of it is I do think society, the community at large, needs to learn and understand the system better than it does. It's a very closed, usually unless you have family or a reason, most people don't think much about it. I think it's a very thankless part of the government, and unfortunately sometimes you get what you pay for. The money also doesn't match what I think the job should be at the state level and at the county level either. These officers, these folks that are working inside the system, their life expectancy is reduced by about 16 years off of a normal job because of the stress involved with working inside with a very difficult population. The pay and so forth just really never matches, I think, the difficulty of the work, and so oftentimes you find yourself, at least I do, kind of hoping that society views it a little differently. For example, when I got in this line of work right out of college, and I remember reading in class work and so forth around corrections and so forth. You never heard the word mentally ill. You never heard about the mental health problem in jails, and it's a large part of what we do now. And so the staff that work there not only have to be prepared to do various things from a danger standpoint, but they're also asked to be almost social workers and psychologists. And so I just think, I hope the conversations in the paper and whether it's a commissioner or whether it's something else, I hate the political part of that.
Well, and the argument for the commissioner, at least in the editorial that I read in the paper, and I've heard this elsewhere, and it's kind of the same task that you have here. They were making the argument that he is more of a budget administrator for the governor and not being a corrections commissioner, meaning that he's focused on the money of it, which is a huge part of it, and I understand, is their argument. I'm not saying this is the case, but he's not really being a commissioner of corrections, which is really addressing some of the corrections issues and recognizing that some things, are separate from money. And you always want to go back to the mayor and say, hey, look, I came in under budget. You want to go back to the governor, and I understand that. But on the other hand, I'm like, gosh, sometimes, you can't just always look at dollars and cents.
Yeah, I don't know him really well. I do know Commissioner Schofield. He's from Georgia. He was a deputy commissioner in corrections down in Georgia, came here, I guess, when Governor Haslam, appointed him. So he has a corrections background. I do not know their relationship between the commissioner and the governor, but part of the commissioner's job, I think, is to make your case to the governor that you know, we're going to have to address these issues. And I'm just assuming that some of that over the last several years, with the budget cuts every year everyone's facing, you know, it did raise the pay of the officers. I've been following that for years because we recruit officers from all over the place, and Department of Corrections is very easy to recruit from.
I was going to ask you, do you sometimes lose, and I know you have many of your officers stay with you a long time, but have you lost some to corrections, or do you tend to take them? For them, I'm wondering, in the realm, is it a step up financially and maybe even professionally to go from the state prison system to the Davidson County Jail, or vice versa?
We have never lost one in my knowledge. And
have you hired some from there?
We could take, I mean, we have a class over there right now. We have 33 officers in class, and I suspect a third of those are from the Department of Corrections, and we've turned away many of them. And a lot of it's pay, a lot of it is opportunity. You know, if you're from around here, obviously, you know, you can move around an organization, and I think we do pay better. I think the benefits are a little bit better in the county versus the state. But I do believe the other part of that is that we need, and the conversations in the Tennessean, but you know, to understand what is going on in our system. I don't think the commissioner is all to blame for that at all. I think we need to balance that out. I don't like the politics of it. The legislature getting involved is not a bad thing, but I want to make sure that, I mean, this always feels partisan at times, and that just really weakens what we're really trying to do at every level. So whether there's legitimacy or not, there was an outside agency, American Correctional Association, came in, did audits for them. But I can understand where it's all kind of mounting, and I think someone's going to have to do something, whether it's a governor, whether it's a commissioner, or hopefully the legislature as a whole. It's a tough line of work. It's tough to find good staff to work in there. It's tough to find a commissioner that comes in and has all that you're talking about, kind of the business savvy part of it, which is a huge part of the job, and the political wherewithal, and also the corrections background. It's a tough thing to find, and you know, and again, you're recruiting at very low level pay. A lot of these prisons are in locations. My sister lived down in the kind of more in the Perry County, down in the West Tennessee part of the state, and you know, you get different size, different types of jobs, and the employees that you're recruiting from in these very small areas. It's a tough place to find, and the numbers you need and the quality you need, and ultimately, you know, sometimes you get what you pay for.
And there always has to be guidelines that you follow from the federal level of what the standard has to be for these inmates. Hey, look, you know, it's too easy sometimes for people to say, look, if you don't want to be abused, don't commit the crime and go to jail. And that's, you know, if you say that, you know, you're wrong. I mean, there are guidelines. We're not here to torture or abuse inmates. One thing I've always said, how you treat your prisoners, the people that are bad in society, reflect on what kind of society you have in general. You know, I mean, you have to follow the law and not say, oh, well, you know, hey, if you didn't want to get beat up, don't commit the crime and go. That's wrong, and you know that.
Right.
You know, someone gets beat up in your jail, you're going to find out who's responsible, and someone's going to be in big trouble.
Right, and we literally, you know, we have policies to follow. We want the staff to be safe, but you're not here to punish the inmates. That's not the system. The courts do that, and the courts get to decide the punishment. We're here, and it's a very tough thing to recruit people who are interested in doing it the right way. A lot of times the movies and TV shows portray jails and prisons differently than really than they are, and we don't want, as I call it, the cowboy attitude in this line of work. And it's just like law enforcement all over the country is suspect in a lot of situations, and there's no more place than behind the wall where that can really get out of hand if you don't watch out. And so I think, you know, I hope the conversation leads us to a better place. Again, I hate the political part of it, just because either side, or how, as long as we can keep it into what's best and what are we trying to accomplish, and you know, hopefully here in our own state they can get that addressed.
Politics can be part of it. I'm not, you know, looking just locally, but nationally. You saw where presidential candidate Hillary Clinton went on record this past week saying that if she's elected, she'll do everything she can to eliminate privatizing of the prison systems. And she said she's no longer going to take money from some of these groups. There is some privatizing here, right? We have CCA. And, you know, I mean, I can see the pros and cons of both. I tend to, be it privatizing schools or privatizing prisons, I just worry sometimes that the focus will be too much on the bottom line and making money, and that the standards for whether caring for inmates or educating students, whatever, I just worry sometimes that can get lost in the dollar signs.
Yeah,
You do both.
Right. I've debated this all over the country, by the way. I've been in different panels and everything. I actually think it has a really good place in our system. And I don't mean just Nashville, but I think the government, look what we're talking about. Look what you started off with. I mean, right now there is at least an attitude that our state prison system, and I'm quoting what's been written, is out of hand, if you will, and all this. And you think about it.
Problems. Yeah.
For people to argue that the government is the only way to accomplish something like running prisons or schools, to me is misguided. I also think privatization only is a problem. I think the balance of those two things and kind of the competition to try to keep the other in play, and sometimes states don't deserve to keep running their prison system if they're not going to be committed to doing it the right way, in my opinion. I've had a lot of people that do what I do all over the country who've gone to prison themselves for mismanagement of their operations. And so what I don't like is I think the balance of that is that the government has a responsibility to oversee how these things operate. But if the government feels, and I'm saying state or county or federal government, that in situations that privatization can be, and I'll give you an example, dealing with mentally ill. I think a county like Nashville and others should really explore the option of putting out to bid the opportunity for someone to come in here and help us deal with the mentally ill that are incarcerated. The government typically doesn't do well with those types of things. It takes forever. It's very hard to get a program put together. But if you were in the mental health field and you had the opportunity to come in here and say, look, I'll take 100 of the people that are incarcerated that are diagnosed mentally ill, and I will treat them with XYZ mental health protocol. I think that's a fantastic way to deal with a problem versus to get that done in the government. I won't live long enough to see all of that put together to happen. And so there's a balance out there. I agree it shouldn't take over the world. It scares me that the monopoly of that is a dangerous thing. But I do like a balance. I like some options out there. And but I did read, I was quite surprised really that I'm very supportive of the over-incarceration conversation. I think that is a problem.
That we're incarcerating too many.
Right, right. But privatization is not the problem for that. I mean, privatization isn't out. They may be lobbying and things, but what we need to talk about is, what are we arresting people for, and who's making the arrest, and who's
so you
incarcerating?
can control that, because you're right. Some critics will say, well, privatization, they want more inmates to help fuel their business. But you can control that by setting up the laws in such a way that you get what you get, folks, based on what's the law.
Yeah, we have some really ridiculous laws. We're
going to get into that and some of the costs involved as well. We'll take some phone calls. By the way, if you had tried getting through, our phone lines have not been on forward. They've got them straightened out now. The number 737-7587 is the number. If you want to jump in, it's open. We can talk. That's just one topic I brought up. The sheriff here, it's an open forum. Joe and others, if you're online, stay there. We'll get you. And we have some lines open, so join in the conversation. We'll be back right after this.